Hey everyone! Today we're going to work on an art project that really focuses more on the process. That means the part where you are actually making the art, not the end result, but the process. A lot of times when I'm making art, I have a bad habit of thinking a lot about what I want it to look like in the end, and I don't necessarily take all the time I need to just enjoy making the art. And this art, because you can't completely predict what it's going to look like in the end, allows you to enjoy that process. If you can accept the fact that you don't know for sure what this is going to look like when you finish, then you might enjoy making the art more than focusing so much on the final project. So these pieces I made using a monoprinting method. That just means we're going to print something one time. This one has no black permanent marker on it. This one obviously does. You can choose, depending on what supplies you may have at your house, if you want to do a black permanent marker design on your paper before you print, or if you want to print on just a plain white piece of paper. Either way works great. You will need washable markers. It does not matter what brand they are. All that really matters is that somewhere on that package it says washable. These are Crayola, but any brand is fine. Any thickness is fine. These are kind of the thinner markers, but anything would work. If you are going to do a black design on your artwork, then you will need a permanent marker. If you use a washable marker to draw your design, it will kind of wash away during the print and fade into the rest of it. So a permanent marker works for this. If you don't have a permanent marker, or if you shouldn't use a permanent marker at your house, then it is totally fine to do a design with no permanent marker. Or you may just choose to do a design without the additional marker part. You will need aluminum foil. It doesn't matter what brand it is, just as long as it's plain, regular aluminum foil like you may have in your kitchen. All right, let's get started. The first one I'm going to make a print for is this one that's a square piece of paper, and I just cut my normal piece of paper into a square shape by folding one corner down this way. And once my corner is lined up, I press this down to make a triangle, and I just cut along this line, and when you open it, you get a square. If you want to do something that has more of a radial symmetry, symmetry is when things are the same, and this one it's the same all the way around. I went ahead and folded my paper across both directions, and that gave me sort of an X shape in the middle that divided my page. But you can do any design you want. That's just one example. So anyway, let's look at how this piece of paper fits on the foil. Your foil needs to be bigger than whatever piece of paper that you're going to use for your print. Just to make life a little bit easier, I'm going to take a pencil, and it's probably hard to see this on a video, but I am just marking where my corners are, and that will let me know where I can stop coloring on my print. So I've marked all four corners. I'm going to scoot this up just a little bit on my video. Now, because this one has sort of a radial design, I'm going to start in the middle and almost do it like a tie-dye that goes outwards. I'm going to get my washable markers. I think I'm going to take out my black and brown just because I want to use all bright colors. And I might even put these in sort of rainbow order. So red, orange, yellow. Let's do our greens, blue, and purple, and then we'll even put in pink. So that might be my plan, but you can use any colors that you want to. So I'm starting in the middle, and to make it look more like a tie-dye, I'm using these sort of zigzaggy lines that go up and down, and I'm just going to start in the middle. It almost looks kind of like a flower when you start. So that's all the red I'm going to use for now. And I'll come with my next color just right next to it. And if you leave some little gaps, it's okay. I think these look so pretty on the foil even without being printed. I'm just going around my circle. And I'm going to repeat this process until I get to the edges of my page. As I work, I'm trying to be sure that my hand isn't resting on my foil. A lot of times when we work, your hand sort of sits on your paper as you write or draw, and that's usually fine, but because these markers sit on the surface of the foil instead of being absorbed, like they're often absorbed into paper, they'll really smear if you rub your hand across them. So try to keep your hand kind of elevated. You can move your body around your paper. If you have a certain size workspace, then you can kind of work around whatever you're doing without resting your hand in it. You may sort of have to move yourself and your arm to keep your hand from sitting in the colors. I'm going to keep working my way all the way around. When I get to the edges of where I can tell my paper will be inside of the workspace, I may stop and not put the colors outside of where I know they won't print, but I'm going to work close to the edges and maybe go just beyond the edges. When I finish my purple, I won't have a whole lot of room left, but I might go ahead and put just a little bit of pink. As you add color, you may notice a little bit of blending of the colors of your markers. That's just because the marker sits on the surface of the foil instead of being absorbed. When you finish, get your paper ready and we will start our print. I just have a little bit of a paper towel. It's damp, it's not wet. You shouldn't have water dripping out of it. You can also use a sponge or just a washcloth if you have one, or an old rag, something like that. It just needs to be a little bit damp. This is going to help wake these colors up. So I'm going to rub this across my paper. So my paper is damp but not wet. And I've got a few places where it got a little more wet and you can kind of start to see through the paper, but that's okay. All right, now I'm going to scoot this back over. This will help wake our markers up and make our print. If we did it with dry paper, we might miss a little bit more of the markers. All right, so I'm going to try to line this up. Let me see if you can see where my corners are. I can see that corner. It does not have to be totally perfect as long as my page is all on here. And at this point, you give it a nice back rub, and you'll have some marker coming out on the sides. So if you accidentally get a little bit of marker on your hands, it'll get on the back of your page, and that's okay. So just sort of rub it down, make sure that you've made contact. You want this paper to really be touching this foil. And again, if we are not perfect, we are going to be okay. All right, so I'm gonna pull this up. That's so cool. And so it's made this really neat sort of tie-dye print on top of my art. For this one, I'm going to start with just a blank piece of paper and not do a design with a permanent marker. So I'm going to mark off where my paper is, and I'm just using a half sheet of paper for this. You can do these with any size of paper, but it's kind of fun to do small art sometimes, I think. So this is a half sheet. You could also do, say, a quarter of a sheet, an even smaller piece, and do something like a bookmark. So I marked my edges. For your design, you can really do anything you want. You can do stripes, polka dots, anything. I think I'm going to make something that looks kind of like paint dripping. When I do my designs, I usually start in a way that keeps me from dragging my hand. So since this design is working kind of side to side, I am going to start on the opposite side from the hand I write with. So I write with my right hand. So this design is going to start on the left-hand side, and that just keeps me from having to raise my hand as much and being as careful about dragging my hand through the art. Now, if you are left-handed, you may want to start on the right-hand side of your art and work your way back to the left, because you'll have a little bit more wiggle room and won't worry as much about having your hand in your artwork. Now, you can use any colors you want. Again, I've kind of gone with sort of a rainbow theme, but any colors you want to use would be fine. I can see the little marks I made to show where the corners of my artwork will be, and so I'm working towards those corners and going slightly outside of the boundaries just in case I don't put my paper perfectly down when I'm going to print. I'm going to keep working my way all the way to those edges and filling in as best as I can. But again, if you leave some little white spots, that's okay. You're going to have some imperfections in this artwork, and that is just part of the process. When you are doing this at home, you don't need to move your foil. I'm only moving it so that you can see my workspace. I'm getting my piece of paper damp. My paper towel is not all that clean, but that's okay. And now we are going to make our print. Now I'm trying to rub all of the areas that I want to be sure that I get onto my paper. You may get a little on your hands, and that's okay. Look, it's such a cool print. I can see where I've missed just a little bit of it where maybe I didn't rub too hard, but I like the imperfections. For my last example, I drew sort of a sunset over water using permanent markers. These are both Sharpies, even though one is blue and one is black. Really, you can use any color permanent marker that you have, but darker usually shows up better. You'll mark it just like your other ones. And for this one, I'm trying to find about the middle of where my print is going to be, because that is about where that sun is setting. Now I know I may not guess this exactly, and so I'm just estimating where that sun will be, and I'll know that if I'm off a little bit, it will just look like the sun is setting into the water. So I am okay with that. When I am coloring this in, I'm coloring really quickly. I'm not looking for perfection, and I know too that because this is foil, the color will spread across the surface a little bit, and I don't have to fill in every little bit. I chose to use warm colors like red, orange, and yellow for the top of my drawing, and I'm going to focus more on cool colors for the bottom of half of my drawing. So that's colors like purples, greens, and blues. And I'm working kind of in horizontal motion for the bottom of the page, because a lot of times when you look out on the water, it sort of looks like its waves go in a horizontal fashion. So that's why I chose to do the colors sort of in that pattern. But you can do them any way you want for whatever your design is. I'm going to try to fill in most of those spaces, not being too worried about a little bit of aluminum foil shining through, and I added just a little bit of red on top. I'm going to get my paper ready for printing by putting a little bit of a damp paper towel over my permanent markers and over the page, and then pressing my page onto the markers on the foil and carefully peeling it up. Remember that for your art, you can use any design you want with your permanent markers and any colors that you want with your washable markers. Just be creative. After a nice back rub, I'm going to peel this up and reveal my sunset. Here we go. It looks great. I can't wait to see what you guys come up with for this project.